The Galactic Zoological Society prided itself on maintaining the most comprehensive database of life forms in the known universe. That was, of course, until they discovered Earth. More specifically, until junior researcher Bleer made the mistake of presenting their preliminary findings on Earth's wildlife to the Society's High Council. Esteemed colleagues, Bleer began, their gelatinous form quivering with excitement as they adjusted the hover screen. I present to you Classification Report X7-249, Wildlife of Sol 3, Designation Earth. The assembled council of the galaxy's finest xenobiologists settled into their various appendage-appropriate seating arrangements, expecting yet another routine presentation about some backwater planet's collection of photosynthesizing blobs and primitive invertebrates. Bleer continued, our first specimen is a common Earth predator, designated Felis catus, which primitive humans have somehow managed to domesticate. A video feed appeared, showing a house cat effortlessly pouncing on a laser pointer. 3 council members promptly fainted. As you can observe, Bleer continued, dabbing their membrane with a condensation cloth, this creature demonstrates impossible acceleration vectors, defies several known laws of physics, and can apparently detect and intercept weapon-grade targeting systems. And this, Bleer added, voice wavering, is what humans keep in their dwellings for fun. Dr. Kix, the Society's senior xenobiologist, raised a tentacle. Surely, this is an apex predator on their world? No, respected elder, Bleer replied, their voice modulator crackling with stress. This is what humans classify as, they hesitated, their form darkening with unease, and I quote, a lazy house pet. The council chamber erupted in chitters, clicks, and various gaseous emissions of disbelief. Moving on, Bleer pulled up footage of a grizzly bear catching salmon. The council's collective screaming nearly shorted out the chamber's acoustic dampeners. By the sacred spores, Dr. Kix whispered. That creature is using tools and performing advanced hydrodynamic calculations in its head while hunting. Indeed, Bleer said, their color shifting to a nervous mauve. And yet, this isn't even classified as one of their more dangerous species. That honor belongs to specimens like this one. The screen displayed a honey badger breaking into what appeared to be a reinforced research station. Notice how it systematically disables our security measures, Bleer commented, their voice reaching a pitch typically reserved for emergency sirens. We lost 3 research drones and a coffee maker to this single individual. The humans call this, they paused dramatically, Tuesday. Dr. Kix had seen enough. Stop the presentation. This requires immediate action. Either this planet has developed the most sophisticated biological weapons program in galactic history or what, respected elder? Or we're dealing with something far more terrifying. Kix's tentacles trembled. Natural evolution, with absolutely no adult supervision. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the soft thud of another fainting xenobiologist hitting their cushioned safety mat. Dr. Kaziz, the Society's crisis coordinator, straightened their posture. Bleer, assemble an emergency research team. We need to understand how these humans have survived on a death world that apparently manufactures living weapons as a hobby. As the council members filed out, Bleer quietly began compiling their research notes, wondering if it wasn't too late to transfer to the Department of Theoretical Physics. At least antimatter wasn't cute, cuddly, and capable of dismantling a research station for fun. The classification of Earth's wildlife had only just begun, and already, the Galactic Zoological Society was woefully unprepared for what they would discover. In their defense, no one in the galaxy was truly prepared for the concept of a platypus. The emergency research team assembled by the Galactic Zoological Society looked less like scientists and more like a special operations unit preparing for orbital warfare. Dr. Kix had insisted on Level 7 biosecurity protocols, which meant everyone, except Bleer, was wearing enough protective gear to survive a supernova. Bleer, being essentially a sentient puddle, had simply doubled their surface tension and hoped for the best. Our first objective, Dr. Kix announced from within their reinforced containment suit, is to make contact with a local wildlife expert. The Society has arranged for us to meet with one Dr. Marcus Flynn at something called a zoo. Is that some kind of military installation? Asked Chief Security Officer Rex, checking the charge on their particle shield for the 7th time. Unknown, Kazis replied. But given what we've seen of Earth's wildlife, we must assume so. The team materialized outside the San Diego Zoo, where Dr. Flynn was waiting for them. He took one look at the assembled aliens, blinked twice, and reached for the first of what would become many aspirin tablets that day. "Welcome to Earth," Flynn said, trying not to stare at Bleer, who was anxiously attempting to hide behind a pamphlet stand. "I understand you're interested in our wildlife." "Interested is an inadequate term," Dr. Kix replied, their voice muffled by several layers of filtration systems. "We need to understand how your species has developed such an advanced biological weapons program without destroying yourselves." Flynn frowned. What now?" "Your biological weapons," Rex interjected, brandishing a data pad. "For instance, this specimen, Vombatus ursinus, which you've engineered to be virtually indestructible and capable of crushing predator skulls with its posterior." "You mean the wombat?" "Even the name sounds tactical," Rex muttered. Flynn pinched the bridge of his nose. "Look, wombats aren't weapons. They're just wombats. Nothing here was engineered. It's all natural evolution." The entire alien delegation took 3 simultaneous steps backward. "Natural?" Bleer's voice modulator hit a frequency that shattered a nearby drinking fountain. "You mean these creatures develop naturally?" "Well, yes," Flynn said, leading them toward the first exhibit. "Though, if you think wombats are impressive, wait until you see our collection of Australian wildlife." "Australian?" Dr. Kix queried. "A continent where evolution basically took a bunch of caffeine and decided to experiment," Flynn explained. "For instance, this is a cassowary." The alien researchers stared at the large, flightless bird with razor-sharp claws and a horn-like casque. "Observe," Rex whispered, "how it maintains constant eye contact while calculating multiple attack vectors." "It's just eating a melon," Flynn said. "Tactical melon disposal." Bleer shrieked, dissolving slightly in panic. The day continued in much the same fashion, Flynn attempting to explain normal Earth biology, while the alien researchers documented everything as if they were observing weapons tests. The situation reached its peak at the small mammals exhibit, where a squirrel had wandered in from the nearby park. "Amazing," Dr. Kix breathed, watching the squirrel bury an acorn. "Their basic infantry units can calculate seasonal weather patterns, implement long-term resource management, and maintain an encrypted database of supply caches, all with a brain the size of a..." They paused, searching for the correct terminology. "A walnut?" Flynn offered. Dr. Kix turned to their colleagues, horror creeping into their voice. "They have brain-sized weapons now?" Flynn sighed and reached for another aspirin. Rex asked, "Another one of their biological smart bombs?" Bleer replied confidently, "I saw one crack open a containment shell all by itself." Flynn had given up on explanations. At this point, he was just documenting everything, for what would either become his resignation letter or the most fascinating research paper in human history. "Perhaps we should move on to the feline enclosure," he suggested, immediately regretting his words as he recalled Bleer's initial report about house cats. "The laser-dodging units?" Rex clutched their weapon closer. "Shouldn't we wait for reinforcements?" "They're taking a nap right now," Flynn assured them. "Power conservation mode." Dr. Kix nodded sagely. "Truly remarkable." As they approached the big cat enclosure, Flynn couldn't help but wonder how these beings would react to learning about the platypus, but that was a mental breakdown for another day. Right now, he had to somehow explain to a group of terrified alien scientists why the lions were playing with a cardboard box. "Advanced materials testing," Bleer whispered furiously, taking notes. "In broad daylight. The audacity." Flynn reached for another aspirin. It was going to be a very long day. The Galactic Zoological Society's research team had set up their base in what they believed to be a secure location, a suburban backyard in Connecticut. Dr. Flynn had tried explaining that his sister's house wasn't exactly a military-grade research facility, but the aliens were convinced its strategic location near a bird feeder made it ideal for observing Earth's wildlife in their natural training grounds. Law Date 47b, Dr. Kix dictated while peering through a quantum-enhanced spotting scope. We have identified what appears to be a primary training facility for Earth's aerial assault units. That's a bird bath, Flynn muttered from his lawn chair, not bothering to look up from his crossword puzzle. Observe how they systematically rotate through the facility, Kix continued. Each unit performing precise aquatic maneuvers while maintaining constant surveillance. They're splashing around because it's hot out. Bleer, who had been attempting to disguise themselves as a garden hose, suddenly rippled in alarm. Movement detected. Unknown entity approaching from Sector 7. A tabby cat sauntered into the yard, heading straight for the research team. Combat unit detected. Rex screamed, activating their personal shield. Initiate emergency protocols. Flynn sighed. That's just Mr. Whiskers. He lives next door. The cat stopped, sat down, and began grooming itself. Fascinating, Kix whispered. It's performing pre-combat maintenance routines right in front of us. The psychological warfare aspects alone. Flynn started to explain but was interrupted when Mr. Whiskers decided that Bleer's amorphous form looked like an interesting new water feature. The cat padded over and delicately touched Bleer with one paw. The resulting chaos would later be described in galactic security reports as the Connecticut Cat Catastrophe. In their panic, Bleer attempted to retreat in 17 different directions simultaneously. Mr. Whiskers, delighted by this new game, pounced. The research team's sophisticated monitoring equipment recorded the following sequence of events. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 1 second, Bleer achieves temporary flight. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 2 seconds, Mr. Whiskers demonstrates impossible midair maneuverability. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 3 seconds, Dr. Kix becomes entangled in their own protective gear. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 4 seconds, 3 separate emergency beacons activate. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 5 seconds, Rex attempts to negotiate with the cat using advanced diplomatic protocols. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 6 seconds, the bird bath is declared a casualty of war. Abort mission. Kazik shouted from beneath an overturned lawn chair. The combat unit has breached our defenses. Flynn watched as Mr. Whiskers, having thoroughly terrorized the alien research team, curled up for a nap in a patch of sunlight. Should I log this as a successful field test? Bleer gasped from their new position, draped over the fence. Speaking of field tests, VX interjected, emerging from behind a shrub. What's that unit doing over there? They pointed to a squirrel performing its usual routine of digging, forgetting where it had just dug, and then digging somewhere else. By the sacred spores, Kix breathed. It's conducting ground penetration exercises. The randomized pattern. The deliberate false starts. This is advanced guerrilla warfare training. It's just being a squirrel, Flynn explained for what felt like the 1000th time. No species develops this level of tactical expertise naturally. Kix insisted. Next, you'll tell us that your raccoons aren't specially trained infiltration specialists. Flynn suddenly became very interested in his crossword puzzle. Dr. Flynn, Bleer's voice modulator hit a nervous high note. Why aren't you refuting that statement about raccoons? 7 across, Flynn muttered. 9 letters. Starts with D. Deliberate avoidance of a topic. Before anyone could pursue this line of questioning, a new sound drew everyone's attention. Something was moving through the underbrush at the edge of the yard. Multiple contacts, Rex reported, checking their sensors. Small units moving in formation. That'll be the Thompson chickens, Flynn said. They sometimes get out of their yard. The alien research team watched in horror as a group of chickens emerged, scratching and pecking at the ground in what they were convinced was a sophisticated minesweeping operation. Ground warfare units. Bleer burbled in panic. With built-in terrain manipulation capabilities. They're looking for bugs, Flynn tried to explain, but the research team was already calling for an emergency evacuation. As the aliens scrambled to pack up their equipment, minus several pieces that Mr. Whiskers had claimed as tribute, Flynn couldn't help but smile. He had been saving the really interesting animals for later. After all, they hadn't even gotten to the honey badgers yet. And somewhere in the distance, a raccoon was figuring out how to open a supposedly raccoon-proof trash can, proving that sometimes, the aliens weren't entirely wrong about Earth's wildlife. The Galactic Council shifted uncomfortably in their various forms of seeding. Many representatives had already activated their personal shield generators, while one particularly nervous delegate had encased themselves in a bubble of quantum-hardened spacetime, their form flickering with stress. Then, Bleer addressed the assembly, struggling to maintain their cohesion. "We present evidence of their apex predator units." The display flickered to life, showing footage of a house cat methodically knocking objects off a table. "Observe the systematic testing of gravity weapons," Rex, the Council's security analyst, narrated. "Each item is carefully chosen for maximum psychological impact." "That's just Mr. Whiskers being a cat," Dr. Flynn, Earth's representative and a specialist in gravity manipulation, interjected. The Council's chief administrator, a being composed entirely of crystalline thought structures, pulsed with concern. "These capabilities seem impossible without advanced genetic engineering." "Dr. Flynn, how does your species explain this?" Flynn adjusted his tie and took a deep breath before responding. "It's called natural selection. Essentially, everything on Earth has been trying to eat or avoid being eaten for billions of years. These are the creatures that got really good at survival." A heavy silence settled over the chamber. "You mean?" The administrator's crystals pulsed with horror. "These abilities developed naturally through combat evolution?" "Well, yes," Flynn said. "Though I wouldn't call it combat exactly. It's just nature." Bleer wavered. "You're saying your entire planet is one giant weapons development facility?" "No. That's not. The evidence is clear." Kix interrupted. "Earth must be classified as a restricted military research site. These biological weapons. They're not weapons." Flynn snapped. "Look, where are all of you from? What's the wildlife like on your worlds?" The council members exchanged uneasy glances before the administrator hesitantly projected an image. It showed a floating ball of fluff with enormous eyes. "Behold the deadly Zorblax," the administrator announced. "It can deliver a mild shock equivalent to static electricity." Flynn stared at the image, then burst into laughter. "Oh my God," he wheezed, "you're not afraid of Earth because we engineered superweapons. You're afraid because you've never seen actual wildlife before." "I don't understand," Kix admitted. Flynn pulled up his own presentation. "Let me show you something. This is what we call natural selection, and it all started about 4 billion years ago when the first single-celled organisms decided that other single-celled organisms looked delicious. What followed was a crash course in Earth's evolutionary history that left the Council oscillating between fascination and sheer horror." Flynn detailed predator-prey dynamics, survival pressures, and why everything in Australia seemed hellbent on destruction. "So you see," he concluded, "nothing on Earth was engineered. It's just the result of billions of years of creatures either getting better at survival or becoming lunch." "But the honey badger," Bleer protested weakly. "Is just exceptionally good at not becoming lunch," Flynn finished. "Though, I admit, that one might be a little spiteful too." The council chambers buzzed with anxious discussion. Finally, the administrator spoke. "We appear to have made a significant error in classification. Earth's wildlife is not a weapons program, it is metal as hell," Flynn suggested. "I was going to say an unprecedented example of evolutionary advancement through competitive survival strategies, but your term is more succinct." The reclassification vote was unanimous, though several council members insisted on keeping their shields activated for the remainder of the proceedings. Earth would not be designated a restricted military zone after all. However, the administrator added, "We would like to propose a cultural exchange program." Our citizens could learn much from studying your wildlife. Like what? Flynn asked. How to be, as you put it, metal as hell. As the session concluded, Flynn couldn't help but grin. He still had one last trick up his sleeve. Before we adjourn, he said casually, would you like to hear about something called a platypus? The ensuing chaos would later be known as the Great Council Chamber Incident of 2024, requiring several species to evolve entirely new ways to faint. 6 months later, Earth had become the galaxy's hottest tourist destination. The Galactic Zoological Society had established 17 new research stations, each positioned near what they still insisted on calling high-value tactical observation points, which were mostly just public parks with good bird feeders. Dr. Flynn, now officially titled Chief Xenobiological Education Officer for Terrestrial Predator Evolution, a name he did not choose, sat in his office at the Galactic Wildlife Cultural Center, watching aliens react to his latest educational series, Why Everything in Australia Wants to Kill You, and Why That's Perfectly Normal. The gift shop is struggling to keep up with demand, Bleer reported. They had finally mastered the art of maintaining a stable form within 50 meters of a house cat. The I Survived Earth's Wildlife t-shirts are particularly popular. How's the new research team holding up? Flynn asked, noting that Bleer now only slightly rippled at the sight of Mr. Whiskers, who had since been promoted to Chief Feline Relations Officer after the Connecticut incident. Dr. Kicks's latest paper on squirrel warfare tactics was well received, Bleer replied. Though we're still dealing with the fallout from last week's raccoon incident. The break-in? Flynn grinned. 17 security systems, quantum-locked containers, temporal containment fields. And they still got in? For half a sandwich. To be fair, it was a really good sandwich. The Galactic Tourism Board had embraced Earth's reputation, marketing it as the planet where evolution went hardcore, with visitor numbers skyrocketing. The most popular attraction? The Extreme Wildlife Observation Course, where aliens could safely watch Earth creatures do absolutely nothing, while convinced they were witnessing elite military survival training. Oh! Bleer bubbled enthusiastically. The council approved our proposal for the new platypus research facility. How many researchers fainted during the approval meeting? Only 3 this time. We're building a tolerance. Flynn checked his schedule. Is it time for the honey badger documentary premiere? Bleer shifted nervously. I still think the title is excessive. Nature's Middle Finger, the honey badger story tested well with focus groups, Flynn assured them. Especially the part where it breaks into the research station's cafeteria. That wasn't supposed to be part of the documentary. Best footage we got. The premiere was a resounding success, though several theaters had to be outfitted with emergency containment fields to prevent mass panic. The honey badger became an overnight galactic sensation, spawning a merchandise empire that could rival Disney. As Flynn wrapped up his day, he found a classified memo on his desk. It was from the Galactic Council. Subject: Preliminary findings on Earth's aquatic species, designation, dolphins. Summary: Evidence of evolutionary trolling. Bleer peered over his shoulder. Should we tell them? Flynn smirked. Let's wait until they've fully recovered from the platypus revelation. Besides, we haven't even introduced them to crows yet. Bleer shuddered. And what about your upcoming ocean wildlife series? Oh, you mean the one about how we have a fish that can punch through battleship armor? The mantis shrimp episode made 3 reviewers evolve anxiety glands they didn't previously possess, Bleer noted proudly. Flynn simply grinned. And we haven't even gotten to Orcus yet.